The courtroom was the usual mix of nerves and routine, a quiet blend of anxious defendants, exhausted parents, and people hoping today's hearing would be the last consequence of a mistake they made weeks ago. Papers shuffled, heels tapped, whispered conversations drifted like dust in the morning light. And then, without warning, the entire atmosphere shifted. Heads turned, conversations cut off mid-breath. Even the bailiff straightened his posture as though instinct had warned him something unusual, or someone unusual, had just entered the room. But it wasn't a judge. It wasn't a city official. It wasn't even someone with authority. It was a teenager. 17-year-old Olivia Reed, daughter of Congressman Nathaniel Reed, stepped into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom with the attitude of someone walking into a VIP event, not a place where accountability lives. She didn't slow down at the doorway. She didn't show a hint of respect. She glided forward with the unearned confidence of someone raised to believe rules apply to everyone except her. Her designer school blazer looked freshly tailored, her diamond earrings sparkled under the cheap courthouse lighting, and her luxury handbag swung from her wrist like an accessory in a fashion ad. And she kept her sunglasses on, indoors, hiding her eyes but showcasing her arrogance. Reaching the defendant's table, she dropped into her chair with a dramatic exhale that carried across the room. No acknowledgement of the judge, no glance toward the clerk, not even a pause to take in where she was. Instead, she pulled out her phone and began scrolling, tapping, typing, fully absorbed in the glowing world in her hands, as though the entire courtroom existed solely to wait for her convenience. The clerk cleared her throat softly, trying to hold on to the order that Olivia casually dismissed the moment she walked in. Before we go any deeper, make sure you hit subscribe to Case Closed, because what you're about to witness is one of the most jaw-dropping entrances ever made in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. Now, let's step inside.
Case number 22 to 47, she announces. State of Rhode Island versus Olivia Renee Reed. Olivia does not look up. The gallery begins to whisper. People lean toward each other with the kind of hushed disbelief only true arrogance can provoke. Many had heard the rumors before she entered. Reckless driving in a school zone, a near collision with children, shouting at a crossing guard. But seeing the girl in person makes the whispers feel heavier, more urgent. The bailiff glances toward Judge Caprio, who sits quietly, watching with the calm, steady eyes of a man who has seen every form of disrespect imaginable. But there is something unique here, something sharper, something colder. A teenager with political power in her bloodline and no respect in her posture. Judge Caprio folds his hands and gives her an opportunity to look up. She does not take it, so he speaks. "Good afternoon, Miss Reed," he says gently, using the same tone he uses with every defendant, whether they're 20 or 70, wealthy or struggling. Olivia continues typing for a moment, as if she didn't hear him. Then, without lifting her gaze, she mutters, "Sure, whatever." A wave of disapproval moves through the courtroom. A mother, seated toward the back, shakes her head. Someone whispers, "This girl has no idea where she is." Even the clerk, who's used to difficult defendants, raises her eyebrows. Judge Caprio maintains his calm. "Miss Reed," he says, tone firmer now, "this courtroom requires your full attention. Please put away your phone." Olivia lifts her sunglasses just enough to reveal eyes shimmering with irritation. "I'm busy," she replies bluntly. "Can you just tell me what the fine is so my dad can take care of it?" The gallery freezes. A man in the corner rubs his forehead in disbelief. The bailiff glances at the judge again, but Caprio remains composed, as if weighing the moment carefully. "Miss Reed," he says, Your phone must be put away." Olivia's sigh is dramatic, theatrical. She tosses the phone into her bag like it's an unwanted piece of homework and leans back with crossed arms, glaring at the judge as though he is the inconvenience, not her reckless behavior. Only after she finally stops fidgeting does Judge Caprio open her file. "Miss Reed," he begins, "you are charged with driving 55 miles per hour in a 20-mile-per-hour school zone, failing to stop for a crossing guard, and verbally harassing that crossing guard during the encounter." Olivia scoffs, the sound sharp and disrespectful. "He stepped into the road," she says. "He shouldn't have been standing there when I was trying to get through." "He was directing children across the street," Judge Caprio replies. "That's his job." Olivia snaps back, "Not my problem." A woman in the gallery gasps. A father shakes his head angrily. Caprio turns another page. "You also stated to the crossing guard," he continues, reading directly from the report, "My dad runs this city. Move or lose your
job." Olivia interrupts with an annoyed wave of her hand. "He's exaggerating. I didn't threaten him. I just reminded him he shouldn't block a car like mine." Judge Caprio pauses. He looks at her, steadying not her words, but the way she carries herself, the refusal to accept responsibility, the certainty that she is untouchable, the blind confidence that her father's reputation shields her from consequence. "Miss Reed," he asked quietly, "do you believe traffic laws do not apply to you?" She shrugged, almost proudly. "They shouldn't apply the same way. I'm not some random person." The room goes silent, and for the first time since she entered, the judge leans back, folds his hands again, and looks at her with a long, steady, unblinking stare, a stare that has humbled men twice her age and 10 times her power. Olivia Reed doesn't realize it yet, but that was the moment everything began to change. The silence that followed Olivia Reed's last sentence seemed to stretch across every inch of the courtroom, settling over the benches like a cold sheet of fog. People weren't just surprised, they were stunned. It wasn't often that someone so young, so privileged, so untouched by the real world spoke with such naked disdain for it. Judge Caprio let the silence breathe for a moment, his eyes never leaving hers. Behind his calm expression was something sharper, something unmistakably disappointed. But when he finally spoke, his voice remained gentle, steady, controlled. A tone that had the power to steady storms and disarm tempers without ever rising. "Miss Reed," he said, "I'd like you to tell this courtroom exactly what happened that day, in your own words." Olivia raised an eyebrow, clearly annoyed by the request. "I already said what happened," she snapped. "I was driving to school, I was running late, the crossing guard stepped in front of me even though there weren't any kids on the road yet. He overreacted. I didn't hit anyone. Nothing happened. This is ridiculous." Her tone carried the unmistakable flavor of someone describing a minor inconvenience, not a potentially deadly situation. A few parents in the gallery exchanged glances, concerned, disgusted, frightened by the sheer carelessness in her voice. Judge Caprio nodded slowly, still giving her space. "Miss Reed," he said, "your version of events is noted, but this court has additional information that needs to be heard." He turned slightly toward the bailiff. "Officer D'Angelo, please approach." The officer stepped forward, crisp uniform, squared shoulders, a quiet presence that carried the calm confidence of someone who had seen far too many close calls to take any of them lightly. Judge Caprio asked, "Officer, were you the responding officer to this incident?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Please read your report." The officer lifted the document, his voice steady. "At 7:42 a.m., I received a call regarding a vehicle speeding in a school zone. Upon arrival, I observed a black sedan registered to Congressman Nathaniel Reed's household. The vehicle was traveling at high speed and failed to stop for the crossing guard, Mr. Alan Porter, who was actively guiding children across the street. Olivia let out an impatient breath and muttered something under her breath. The officer continued. Multiple witnesses reported that the driver shouted at Mr. Porter, telling him to get out of the way and claiming her father ran the city. The crossing guard stated he feared for his safety and believed the driver would not stop, even if a child had been in the crosswalk. The gallery stirred again. A woman near the front murmured, "Unbelievable." Judge Caprio remained completely still. "Officer D'Angelo," he said, "is there body cam footage?" Olivia's head jerked up at that. "Wait, what? You recorded it?" she demanded, incredulous. "Yes," the officer replied calmly. "It's standard procedure." You can't just misread," Caprio interrupted. "The footage will not be played in this courtroom unless it becomes necessary. Right now, we are only establishing the facts." Olivia sat back with a huff, arms crossed, jaw clenched tight. But something had shifted. A flicker of uncertainty, a crack in her confidence. The judge continued. "Officer, please describe the condition of the children present at the crosswalk." "Yes, Your Honor. At least 5 children were already approaching the curb. Several were visibly startled by the speeding vehicle." "Startled? Kids get startled by everything. They're dramatic." A ripple of disbelief spread through the courtroom. A father in the back shook his head, whispering, "My God, she has no idea." Judge Caprio's eyes narrowed just slightly, not in anger, but in a way that suggested the line between patience and consequence was beginning to thin. "Miss Reed," he said calmly, "do you understand the potential consequences of your actions?" She shrugged. "Nothing happened." The judge looked at her. For a long moment, then spoke in a tone so calm it had weight. "Miss Reed, sometimes the most frightening harm is the harm that almost happens." Olivia blinked, uncomprehending. "Almost doesn't count." The judge's eyes shifted slowly, deliberately toward the people in the gallery, then back to the teenager before him. "Miss Reed," he said, "I believe you are about to learn how wrong you are." For a long moment after Officer D'Angelo finished reading his report, the courtroom felt caught between disbelief and outrage. It wasn't the kind of silence that settles naturally. It was the kind that presses down, thick and unmoving like the air before a storm. Olivia Reed, unfazed, tapped her nails against the defense table, a gesture dripping with indifference. She didn't seem to notice or care that the entire room had turned against her. To her, this was still just an inconvenience, a delay, an irritation she believed would vanish the moment her father walked through the doors. But Judge Caprio took his time before speaking. He didn't rush. He didn't scold. When he finally lifted his gaze toward the teenage girl before him, his voice remained calm, but different, deeper, weighted. "Miss Reed," he said quietly, "I would like you to explain one thing. Why were you traveling at high speed in a school zone?" The teenager sighed thematically, as though the question were beneath her. "Because I was late," she said. "I overslept. I didn't want to look stupid walking in after the bell." Obviously, her words triggered another ripple of shock across the gallery. Parents stiffened. Teachers exchanged alarmed glances. A few people whispered with barely contained outrage. She didn't seem to notice any of it. "Miss Reed," the judge continued slowly, "your reason for speeding was vanity." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, it was not vanity. It was just, I didn't want everyone staring at me. It's embarrassing." He nodded once, as if cataloging the answer. "I see. And you believed your embarrassment was worth risking the lives of children who were trying to cross the street." She waved a hand dismissively. "You're being dramatic. Nobody got hurt. You're all acting like I ran over a classroom." That was the moment the room shifted. Not loudly, not sharply, quietly but unmistakably. A mother in the second row pressed a hand to her chest. A father leaned forward, shaking his head. Even the court stenographer paused typing for a beat before continuing. And Judge Caprio's face grew still, not angry, not disappointed, still. "Miss Reed," he said softly, "I want you to understand something very clearly. Nothing is more fragile than a child's safety, and nothing is more devastating than how easily it can be destroyed." Olivia groaned, slumping further into her chair. "Can we stop making this dramatic speech? You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal." "No," the judge replied. "I'm acting like a guardian of every child who walks through that crosswalk." She scoffed.
"Whatever." The word hit the courtroom like a slap. The judge inhaled slowly. "Ms. Reyes," he said to the clerk, "please read the witness statement submitted by Mr. Porter." Olivia straightened slightly, irritation flashing across her face. "Seriously, that old guy again?" Gasps erupted this time, audible, layered, unfiltered. The bailiff took a step forward without realizing he had. The judge looked at her with a quiet intensity. "Ms. Reed, Mr. Porter is not that old guy. He is a crossing guard who has protected thousands of children from harm for nearly 2 decades, and he deserves respect." Olivia rolled her eyes but didn't respond. The clerk began reading. "Statement from Mr. Alan Porter. The vehicle approached the crosswalk at a speed that made me believe it would not stop. I stepped forward to slow the driver, but she yelled at me, called me names, and accelerated while I was still near the vehicle. I have never feared for my life on that corner until that moment." End quote. The courtroom felt colder. Even Olivia seemed momentarily thrown off, her confidence slipping for a fraction of a second before she forced it back. "He's exaggerating," she insisted. "I didn't almost hit him. He jumped out like some kind of movie stunt guy." Her tone was flippant, but her foot tapped beneath the table, nerves finally showing. Judge Caprio studied her with quiet patience. "Ms. Reed, this court has also reviewed a statement from a mother who was present that morning." Olivia let her head fall back. Oh, great. Another dramatic parent. The judge didn't react. The clerk lifted the next page. "Statement from Mrs. Hayes. My 7-year-old daughter grabbed my arm and cried because the car came so close. She said she thought the driver didn't care if anyone died." The words hit the courtroom like a blow, one that left the air trembling. Olivia blinked, once, twice. Her face tightened, but she forced it back into arrogance. "Kids cry about everything. They're dramatic." Someone in the gallery whispered sharply, "She has no soul." Judge Caprio leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Ms. Reed," he said quietly, "you keep dismissing the fear you caused because you did not feel it yourself." She stiffened. He continued, his voice soft but firm. "Fear is not imaginary simply because it did not come from your heart." Her throat bobbed barely, but enough. "This court," the judge continued, "is not done reviewing evidence. But before we continue, there is someone else who has requested to speak regarding this incident." Olivia frowned. "Who?" Judge Caprio nodded toward the rear of the courtroom, and every head turned at once. "Your father," he said. The doors opened. Congressman Nathaniel Reed stepped inside, and for the first time all morning, Olivia Reed's confidence cracked. The moment Congressman Nathaniel Reed entered the courtroom, something shifted. Not because of his title or status, but because of the expression on his face. Gone was the polished confidence he usually carried, political rallies and press conferences. Gone was the public charm that had helped him climb into office. What entered instead was a father, wearing the unmistakable weight of disappointment. His daughter's arrogance, the whispers in the gallery, the severity of the charges, everything seemed to gather on his shoulders as he walked with slow, measured steps. Olivia's posture instantly changed. The defiance that had carried her through the morning dissolved into a subtle stiffness, the kind that only appears when someone realizes they are no longer shielded by privilege. She looked at him, expecting a reassuring nod, some silent promise that he would fix all of this with a few words. But he didn't look at her right away. Not yet. His eyes went first to Judge Caprio. "Your Honor," he said quietly, "may I speak?" His voice was steady, but there was a tremor beneath it, one that only a parent carrying deep regret could carry. Judge Caprio gave a small nod. "You may, Congressman Reed." The congressman turned toward the room, not just toward the judge. He faced the parents, the crossing guard seated in the back, the officer standing near the wall, and eventually, finally, his daughter. When he began speaking, it was not the voice of a politician. It was the voice of a father forced to confront the consequences of his child's upbringing. "I have served this city for 20 years, he said, "and in all that time I have believed in accountability, for citizens, for officers, for leaders. But today, I have to acknowledge something far more difficult." His eyes landed on Olivia, and she visibly stiffened, bracing for a defense that was not coming. "I have failed my daughter." A gasp rippled across the courtroom. Olivia's mouth fell open in disbelief. "Dad," she whispered, but he lifted a hand gently, stopping her. "I taught her many things," he continued, "but perhaps not the most important lesson. That respect is not inherited, and responsibility is not optional." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, the entire courtroom hanging on every syllable. Olivia's eyes welled with anger, not remorse. She shook her head. "This is ridiculous. Why are you acting like I committed a crime? I didn't hit anyone." Her whisper was sharp, but her father didn't flinch. "Olivia," he said softly, "you scared people. You terrified children. You nearly hit a man who has dedicated himself to protecting them. That matters." She looked away, blinking furiously. "You're supposed to be on my side." Her father's response was the first moment that truly broke the room's silence. "I am on your side," he said gently. "Being on your side doesn't mean protecting you from the truth." Judge Caprio watched carefully, his expression unreadable. He allowed the exchange to continue because it was no longer just evidence, it was revelation. The congressman exhaled deeply, his gaze falling to the floor for a moment before lifting again. "Your Honor, I want the record to reflect something plainly. I did not call this court. I did not ask anyone to intervene. I did not request special treatment." He paused. "Whatever my daughter believed, she believed incorrectly." Olivia's face flushed bright red. "Dad, stop it!" she hissed, but her father pressed on. "Mr. Porter," he said, turning toward the crossing guard, "I want to apologize to you, personally. My daughter's behavior was unacceptable. You put yourself in danger to protect children. You deserve gratitude, not threats." The elderly man in the back straightened, a mixture of relief and dignity returning to his face. The congressman turned next to the gallery. "And to the parents who feared for their children that morning, I am sorry. No title, no surname, no household should carry enough power to make you fear for your child's safety." Olivia stared at him in disbelief, her jaw trembling. "Why are you humiliating me like this?" she burst out, her voice cracking. "You're acting like I'm a criminal just because some kids got scared." The room stiffened again, not from indignation this time, but from the painful realization that she still didn't understand. Judge Caprio finally spoke. "Miss Reed," he said with quiet gravity, "fear is not measured by the outcome. It is measured by the possibility of tragedy." Olivia swallowed hard, but her anger remained. "Everyone is overreacting." Her father turned fully toward her now, his expression softening, but not his resolve. "Olivia, this is not the world overreacting. This is the world reacting to your actions." She shook her head as though she could physically reject the truth. "I can't believe you're doing this."
The congressman stepped closer, lowering his voice. I love you, but loving you doesn't mean letting you grow into someone who thinks consequences don't apply. The words hit her harder than anything else said that morning. She looked away, blinking rapidly, her chin trembling in a way she hadn't shown anyone until now. Judge Caprio gave a small nod to the congressman. Thank you for your honesty, Congressman Reed. The court takes your words seriously. The father bowed his head respectfully and stepped back. Judge Caprio turned toward Olivia again. The room seemed to shrink around her. Miss Reed, he said calmly, this court has one more piece of evidence to present. Evidence that you may find far more difficult to dismiss than the statements we've heard so far. Olivia's voice wavered. What evidence? The judge folded his hands, his voice steady and final. Your video recording.
Her head snapped up. My what? The judge nodded. Yes, Miss Reed. The footage you recorded yourself, in which you brag about speeding, mock the crossing guard, and laugh at the idea of consequences. The room gasped, and for the first time since she entered the courtroom, Olivia Reed went completely still. The moment Judge Caprio mentioned the video, Olivia's composure fractured. It was subtle at first, a twitch of her fingers, a tightening of her jaw. But then it spread, blooming into full panic. Her voice shot out sharp and trembling. You can't show that. That video was private. The courtroom reacted instantly, a wave of shock and murmurs rolling through the gallery. Judge Caprio remained unmoved. He didn't raise his voice or lean forward. He simply looked at her with the calm certainty of a man who had heard every excuse imaginable. Miss Reed, he said softly, anything you choose to record and post online becomes part of the public sphere. You shared this video with your friends. One of those friends shared it with the school, and the school provided it to this court. Olivia's breath hitched. Her eyes darted toward her father, who watched her with a heartbreak that softened nothing. For the first time, the teenager looked like exactly what she was, a young girl who had built her world on entitlement and now watched it collapse plank by plank beneath her feet. Please don't, she whispered. But the plea held no shape, no argument, only fear. Judge Caprio gave a small nod to the clerk. Miss Reyes, please read the transcript aloud, he said. We will not show the video itself, but the language used is relevant. Olivia covered her face with her hands, mortified. She rocked slightly in her seat as the clerk lifted the printed sheet. Beginning of transcript, the clerk read evenly. Oh my God, this idiot crossing guard just jumped in front of my car for no reason. Like, calm down, Grandpa. My dad is a congressman. I don't have time for slow old people. The gallery erupted. Soft gasps, sharpened hails, disbelieving whispers that felt like arrows. The clerk continued. If he wants to stop traffic, he should go to a retirement community. I swear, if he got hurt, it wouldn't even be my fault. People like him need to get out of the way. Olivia shook her head frantically. I was joking, she cried. People joke all the time. But the judge was not swayed. Continue, he instructed. The clerk read the final line. If anyone tries to give me a ticket, my dad will handle it. Nobody messes with the Reed family. End transcript. Silence followed. Cold, absolute, suffocating. Olivia wiped at her face, her breathing shallow, her eyes shining with humiliation. She tried to speak, but no sound came. Judge Caprio folded his hands. Miss Reed, he said quietly, this court does not punish jokes. But what you recorded was not humor. It was arrogance. It was disregard for human life. And it was a belief deeply rooted that the rules protecting children do not apply to you. Olivia sniffed hard, trying to hold back tears she no longer had the strength to hide. I didn't mean it. I didn't think anyone would see it. Her father closed his eyes in pain. Judge Caprio watched her carefully. Miss Reed, he said,
You didn't think anyone would see because you believed no one needed to, because you believed your father's title protected you from consequences. She shook her head violently. No, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Intent does not erase impact, the judge replied, his voice firm but compassionate. A child's fear, a crossing guard's terror, a community's outrage, these are real consequences. Olivia lowered her head, shoulders trembling. Her father quietly stepped toward her, but stopped halfway as if unsure whether comfort would help or hinder. Judge Caprio reached for a document on his desk, the sentencing recommendation. The entire room leaned forward, the air thick with anticipation. Miss Reed, he said, given your age, your lack of criminal record, and the statements made by your father acknowledging responsibility, this court believes your actions require not just penalty, but education. Olivia lifted her head slightly, eyes swollen. Education? She echoed, barely audible. Yes, the judge said. Correction, reflection, growth. He paused. This is my sentence. The room held its breath. First, he said, you will complete 200 hours of community service with the Providence School Safety Program. You will work alongside the very crossing guards you mocked. You will see what they protect. You will assist them every morning for as long as the program requires. Olivia's mouth fell open. Every morning? Yes, the judge replied. Rain, snow, or shine. The gallery hummed with approval. Second, he continued, you will attend a mandatory driver responsibility and youth safety course, where you will meet families who have lost children to speeding drivers. You will listen to them. You will confront the consequences you so casually dismissed. A tear fell down Olivia's cheek, and she didn't bother to wipe it. Third, the judge said, your driver's license is suspended for 6 months. She gasped. 6 months? How will I get to school? How will I... Judge Caprio raised a hand gently. You will find a way. Responsibility requires sacrifice.
The courtroom held its breath as Judge Caprio reached the final part of his ruling, the one no one saw coming. And lastly, he said, his voice steady but unmistakably firm, you will stand before your entire school and give a presentation detailing exactly what happened here today, every decision, every consequence, not to shame you, but to protect someone else from repeating your mistake. A stunned silence washed across the room. Olivia's eyes widened, her composure finally cracking. I can't do that, she whispered, her voice breaking. Her hands trembled as tears streamed down her face. Everyone will know. Everyone will look at me differently. They'll judge me. Judge Caprio's tone softened in a way that carried more weight than any punishment. Miss Reed, he said gently, judgment isn't your enemy. A life lived with no self-reflection is. That was the moment it all collapsed. The attitude, the defiance, the mask she'd worn since she walked through the courtroom doors. Olivia fell into her father's arms, the congressman holding her tightly as her sobs echoed through the chamber. His own eyes glistened, not with anger, but with the painful relief of a parent finally seeing the lesson take hold. Judge Caprio waited, allowing the moment to unfold with dignity rather than embarrassment. Then he spoke the words that settled over the room like a quiet truth. Miss Reed, the world does not remember your worst moments if you choose to rise beyond them, but it will remember the wisdom you share, starting today. He struck the gavel once.
A single, sharp note. And the courtroom understood. What began as entitlement had ended as transformation. A young girl had taken her first real step toward accountability, the kind that doesn't just change a sentence, but changes a life. Before you go, make sure you hit subscribe to Case Closed. More stories of justice, redemption, and real consequences are on the way.